Okay, we are back to our latest observations and additions to our encyclopedia of chess openings. Some new ideas and some new developments. Let's go to a couple of positions in Caro Kann. We suggested e4, c6, d4, d5, ed, cd, and bishop d3. Now, there are few ways to play for black, and we covered it mostly on our DVD about this opening. Now, here a couple of improvements for black and how we're gonna respond to them. Knight c6, c3, and we know that on knight f4 we will go bishop, on knight f6 we will go bishop f4. So we are doing good here, and we know what to play here, and this is very well covered. However, what we're gonna do if black goes queen c7? Now this is increasingly popular continuation for black in this position. The reason why queen c7 is played here, and not to let bishop develop on f4 and wait when white develops knight, and then to go bishop g4. Now there is a possibility to play knight e2, and it was played many times, but then black plays bishop g4, and after f3 bishop goes back to d7. And I used to play like this. I don't really like this position very much, because pawn on f3 is not very well placed, and if white castles, now black can go e5, having a reasonably good position. Of course, white can play here. After bishop d7, white can play f4, and the position is very interesting and very playable. However, I want to suggest different continuation in this position. Knight f3 move and bishop g4. Now this is like a very popular position of a queen's gambit declined with reversed colors. But since colors are reversed, white has an extra tempo. So white has black's position but with extra tempo. Now I would suggest knight d2, e6, knight f1. So we played, that's why we don't castle to play. Our plan is to bring the knight to g3 without losing tempo. And here is why: bishop d6, knight g3. Now we want to go h3 next move and solve the problem of unpleasant pin on white's knight on f3. So when we go knight g3 here, black has two ways to develop: knight e7 or knight f6. I would say knight f6 is a little more natural, and white goes h3. Now, what we can expect here from black? There are basically two continuations here for black. Not basically, but only two continuations for black. One of them is bishop takes f3 knight, and the other continuation is bishop takes the g3 knight. And I think white is doing fine in both cases. Okay, let's look at sharp continuation. Bishop takes on g3. Then we play pawn takes to g4, and now black's bishop is hanging, and if they simply retreat to f4 or to d6, white goes g5, having serious advantage. Even on bishop f4, g5. Now black has to retreat and open h file for the rook, and good development guarantee white some advantage, or serious advantage. But here black has some tactical possibilities. After white took the bishop, they can play knight takes g4, and I think this position is better for white. This is a piece sacrifice, temporary. Pawn takes bishop, queen takes g3 check. King d2 is the only move not to get mated, otherwise queen f2 would have been a mate. King d2, and now it's black's move. What can black do here? Well, let's see. Let's explore various different possibilities. What I would say is the best move here is knight f2. Now, what can happen if black plays queen takes g2, and after bishop e2, we're gonna get here the position that is favorable for white. Now, what can black do here? Knight f2 is the only move because white wants to play simply rook g1. So, and after knight f2, rook to g1, black's only choice here, queen takes f3, followed by knight takes on d1. But then we simply play king takes d1. And in this position, although black does have 3 pawns for a piece, a position is highly favorable for white. g7 pawn hangs, castling is real bad because of bishop h6. And when black goes g6, white goes bishop f4, followed by king d2, bringing the rook over, and this position is much better for white. So now let's explore few other possibilities for black. That's not the only option they have. So here is the position when they sacrificed the piece, and the only other option they have, queen f2 is obviously bad because of queen e2. The only other option here will be knight to f2. We will go queen e1, knight takes h1, and queen takes h1. This is approximate material equality. Why black has rook and 2 pawns for 2 bishops, but since it's a middle game, 2 bishops are much better, and black has serious problems. Black cannot castle kingside because of checkmate, and all white has to do to develop the bishop somehow, and they cannot do it in a couple of moves. If black goes e5, for example, this is real bad because we take, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, king takes e5, queen takes e5. You know, you may say black opened the position when king is in its center, but black has not developed pieces. We can go here, queen h3, make sure that black cannot castle either side. And then we're going to go king c2, developing the bishop and pieces, and black's position will be close to lost. Maybe it is lost. And, well, only other try for black, we may say, will be rook c8 to stop white from going king c2 because of knight b4 check. But we can go king d1, then develop bishop on e3, back king d2, and we're gonna have two minor pieces versus rook, which is big advantage for white. Notice that black has to go h6 in order to castle next move, and even then their white is going to have very strong piece concentration and attack on the king side. So let's go back to the position where black had to make major decision. Major decision black has to make in this position, and we went h3, and so black has to take then on f3 unless they go to the previous variation. Queen takes f3 and the castle. Let's talk about this position. I think white is clearly better, but we don't castle yet. I don't want to castle here because black may go e5 and get very active play. So I'm postponing the castling for one move. I'm playing bishop g5, attacking the knight on f6, knight d7, and I want to castle now, because now obviously e5 is not as good because d5 pawn is hanging. Later white may want to play queen h5 or knight h5, bring the rook on e1, and this is a playable position, and I'm convinced white has some advantage. Well, it's not a big advantage, but it's as good of a position as you can get in any opening for white with the correct play by black. Now, there is another possibility I want to mention for black here. What will happen if black deviates from the main continuation that we faced on the encyclopedia DVD? So if they don't go knight f6 and knight c6, which brings us to the main variation. So black what can do? They can go knight f6 first, and on c3 bishop g4. Well, now we're going queen b3, and suppose they play queen c7, developing queen, protecting the pawn on b7. Now if they go queen c7, there are various different ways to play for white, but I think most ambitious way is to go h3, and now black has to move the bishop. Now if they move bishop back to d7, then why was knight f6 played and bishop g4? The idea was to put the bishop on g4, develop the bishop, and then play e6. So bishop is not stands behind the pawn structure. But if on h3 they go back on d7, that they defeated the purpose. On the other hand, if they go to h5, white has very unusual possibility, g4, and after bishop g6, bishop takes g6, pawn takes g6, then we go g5. It's counterintuitive play. White wastes too many pawn moves and queen moves to win a pawn on d5. But black wasn't really developing all this time, and I don't think black has sufficient or maybe any compensation at all. White has an extra pawn. So this is the way to meet another deviation from our main variations. So when we play here, when we play bishop d3, we expect black to go knight c6 and knight f6 in any order. We will get bishop f4 in this position we want to play. And if black tries to do something like we just mentioned, knight c6, c3, queen c7, trying to stop bishop f4, we already covered it. And if they try to do knight f6 and after c3, now in this position, now bishop g4, then we go queen b3. We know what to do on queen c7. If they go queen d7, then we can go bishop f4. We have no problem, bishop f4 now. And after knight c6, we're going to go knight d2. And if you check the main variation, then you'll see that you're going to have here identical position. That's identical position which can happen in the main variation, where we say that black must take on f3, knight takes on f3 as the best continuation, and bishop d6, bishop takes d6, queen takes d6. And now taking of this pawn is not very good because of rook b8, queen a6, and black castles. But that's why we don't play like this. Here we depart from the main theoretical advices. So after bishop takes f3, knight takes f3, and this is the position. And now bishop d6, we play bishop g3, and we have it covered in the main encyclopedia analysis. To briefly remind you how game goes: black castles, white castles, and now bishop takes g3, pawn takes g3, and black in this position. This is standard type of position where black has to try to get the queenside play. So if they go rook b8, we go rook a to e1, and you're gonna see why we need the rook on f1. We're gonna use the rook on f1. Now after a6, we go queen to d1, and after b5, we're gonna go g4. And that's the whole idea of getting double g pawns. g4 now, if knight takes on g4, then white has bishop takes h7, king h7, knight g5 check, followed by queen takes g4, and black will be in trouble. But if black doesn't, and they shouldn't take this pawn on g4, then white's plan is, for example, black simply goes b4. We're going to go g5 after knight e8. Then we're going to go g3. That's the plan. B takes c, b takes c. Later we're going to go king g2 and rook on h1, having very interesting, unusual attacking positions. Now you may be thinking about doubling rooks, and this is the position to play, and white has very good prospects here. So this is actually some, well, I wouldn't say innovations, I would say some developments in our system, in the way we play against Caro Kann defense. Now